Hi everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and I am happy to be back today to talk to you about Star Trek Voyager number 5, Incident at Arbuck, by John Gregory Betancourt. This was a fun early Voyager novel, and one of these, things about the early Voyager novels is that they were written before the show even premiered. So the writers were doing their best to, write the characters based upon the little information that they had. And I would say that I think that he did a fairly good job in this one. And one of the things about this book is that they don't go too deep into character development, interpersonal relationships, that kind of stuff. Preferring instead to focus on the sci-fi problem at hand. And that's what they do, and they do it very well. So uh, let's read from the cover. The USS Voyager is caught between a fleet of hostile aliens and a deadly superweapon. Tracking a shuttle's distress signal to the nearly deserted Arbuck system, the USS Voyager crew encounters an unusual weapon 1,000 times more powerful than the starship. Inside the shuttle, the crew discovers an unconscious alien and no more information about the device. Soon, Captain Janeway and her crew are attacked by a group of mysterious warships with an interest in the weapon's power. Now, the warp power offline, the crew of the Voyager must find a way to save themselves from a group of aliens desperate to control the superweapon. That's actually not. That's really not even what happens here. It seems like maybe someone kind of got like an overview of the story, and then maybe they wrote the back based on that, because there really is no fleet of warships in this book. And the story resolves in a rather interesting way. And so if you're kind of coming in expecting maybe a big space battle kind of thing, definitely not what you're getting here. This one was... Well, first off, it seems to be one of those books, and I said this the last time, I think, where Captain Janeway asks Neelix for advice. Neelix says, maybe it's best you don't go over there. I've not had the best of luck. And they do it anyway, and things don't turn out for the best. Well, maybe they turn out okay in the end, but still, maybe they should just take Neelix's advice a little bit more. So, characterization in this book. Again, when he wrote it, the series was not out. So he's writing based on the character Bible that they give out to the writers to kind of give a bio of each character. And based on that, he does a fairly good job of setting up these characters and telling a fun and interesting story. And nobody feels like they're too out of place from where they would normally be, on the show. So, all in all, it's a good sci-fi mystery. So when you're getting into it, you're presented with this very mysterious problem, and then they kind of delve deeper and deeper into it, and then you learn more and more about it. And in addition to that, you also have, which is one of my favorite things, a race that is significantly different than normal humanoids. So the race that they encounter in this book, the Spirians, are fully blind. They have no sight whatsoever. So everything they do, everything they build, is based upon touch and this kind of echo sense. They have these many tentacles, 20, 15, I don't know, sprouting from their head, and that's how they're able to define their environment about them. So that's another thing that's very fun when you get into these books, is when you're able to get into a species that's significantly different than humans. So, and then you get to think about how would they build their ships, how would their monitors work, how would how would they even indicate what's what on their stuff, So that's very good. As far as... Really, I would say no one character has any more focus than another. Everybody kind of does get a little bit to do here. And if I had to call out anyone, maybe Tuvok and B'Elanna have a little bit more than the others do here. But everyone kind of gets something fun to do, and a little kind of piece of the action, of course. So the cover of the book, I didn't look up the artist, but features Janeway and Harry Kim. And interesting enough, Kim didn't do very much, so I'm not sure what they chose there. But I do like the front view of the ship coming right at you. And I'll point out that they did a typo on the author's middle name. There should not be 2 G's in the middle, just 1 G in the middle there. So, interesting little typo. So that's my basic rundown of Incident at Arbuck. Also, interesting title, too. An incident. They have an incident. It is a little bit more than an incident, I would say, at Arbuck. Significantly more. But let's jump into it. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, we'll see you next time. But let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about what happens here. So, Harry Kim is on the bridge and is able to, through his very, very high technical skill, figure out that there is a weak distress call coming through. And he kind of works through it, and he finds out where it's coming from, cleans it up, and puts it on screen for the captain and crew. They're able to see this alien, this Spirian. They can't understand his language. They can see that obviously he is very worked up about something. And they can see through his back window some sort of gigantic kind of space station. So that's the mystery they're presented with to begin with. Captain Janeway calls Neelix up to the bridge. Neelix is a little put out because he's busy getting breakfast around and getting food prepared. That's kind of one little side part of this story, is there's this little interesting, weird Neelix side plot with a Maquis crew member who's trying to wrangle a power supply so he can maybe gain some influence. So, but this is kind of a smaller part of the story that comes through in the end. But the interesting stuff comes in just meeting and seeing this new race, the Spirians. So Neelix comes up and he tells them, yeah, that's a Spirian. I would recommend you don't get involved with them. They are very argumentative people. They basically argue for days at a time over any point whatsoever. So he recommends they just, stay away, and heads back down to the galley to get back to work. Janeway, of course, doesn't listen. They set a course and make their way to the Spirian system. So when they get there, they find the guy's shuttle, which is the life support is failing, so they beam him to sickbay. And then they find this immense space city that has been almost wholly destroyed. Looks like it's been blasted and melted away. Something like 13,000 dead bodies are detected in the atmosphere. And then a little bit away from that, this gigantic tube-shaped thing, which they really have no idea what it is. So they begin to investigate. When they bring the alien on board, he is unresponsive. So at first they're trying to find ways to kind of bring him back around. And the doctor is saying, just give him some time. And then they're also investigating the area and the tube. So they send a away team into the tube to determine what it is and what's going on. And about that time, they have 3 ships show up. And they try to communicate with them to no avail, and the ships kind of immediately open fire. And this is where you have the little bit of action maybe that comes in the book, which really isn't much, which is an interesting little space battle that happens. Chakotay is able to bring some of his skill into it and evade the attackers for a while. And it also gives an interesting perspective, too, because you get to have the battle, and then you have B'Elanna, who's on the space tube thing, and you get to see her perspective of the battle, from, outside of the tube, basically, which I thought was interesting. So, they're able to get away for the moment, and they're basically, the big space tube fires a giant space laser, and they determine that this giant space laser that came out is what destroyed the giant space city. So now they have a little bit more information, and they know that this thing is powering up to fire again. So they cut the Voyager right across the path of it as they're being pursued, and then the blast from that thing kind of knocks out the other ships. Doesn't destroy them, but kind of knocks them out of the battle for now, so that they can continue their research and try to figure out what's going on. and also try to wake up their patient. So going back to him, Janeway first asks the doctor to try some stimulants to wake him up, and he doesn't want to do that. But then eventually he does relent, and he tries this kind of Vulcan blood something or other that has some effect, but he still doesn't wake up. So as a last resort, she asks Tuvok to attempt a mind meld with him. And this is when things in the book get very interesting, because he goes ahead with it, and when he comes out, he's changed. He's taken on an aspect of this guy's personality, and he's also learned about them, learned who they are, and at this point you kind of get a little bit of an info dump on who the Spherians are. And again, they're an argumentative people, and they're made up of all these different factions. And so Zoas, the one they rescued, he belongs to the Tech faction, and the Tech faction was building a warp accelerator. So this tube, which looks like maybe just a giant weapon, was meant to accelerate people into a very high state of warp to get across the galaxy faster. Unfortunately, it appeared to fail. It did not work. And destroyed most of the Tech faction's base and everything that was going on there. So, back on the tube, however, B'Elanna finds out that it was sabotaged. There's a black box on there, and it is being controlled by an outside force. So once Zoas wakes up from after the mind meld, they're able to work with him to establish contact with the 3 ships that came in, which were with the Tech Federation, and they have to start working to get themselves put back together so they can go and then report what is going on. So, but first they have to find out, who sabotaged the thing in the first place, and are they going to be coming to do anything more? So, and I said I was going to take better notes. I did not take better notes on this one at all. My notes kind of failed because I did pretty good, and then when I got to the end, it got really, really good, and I wanted to kind of see how it went, and I just kind of read to the finish there. So, but basically how it ends here. As soon as they remove the black box, they want to remove the black box so that Zoas can look at it and hopefully determine where it came from. And once they remove it, they figure that whoever put it in is going to know and head that way. So they do that, and that's exactly what happens. The military faction of this planet comes in, and they were basically, Zoas kind of determines that they are the ones that are responsible for the destruction of their whole big space city and taking over of the space tube, because they would like to kind of claim it as their own and then use this thing as a weapon. So what they have to do is find a way to buy enough time to get the ships repaired so everybody can get away to their home planet, and then file a complaint against the military faction saying what they did, and then get their recompense. So it's kind of an interesting ending, because not your typical space battle. Instead, they have this space argument where at first Zoas argues against the military leader for an hour or so before they finally reach an impasse. And then Tuvok, who's starting to kind of lose his feeling of being a Spherian, jumps in as well and continues an argument and kind of continues it long enough for the 3 ships to get away. And then also during this, they've been quietly coming up with a plan, and they've been slowly turning the giant space tube gun towards the warship and slowly powering it up, so that when they get to the point where it's finally ready, they basically say, okay, checkmate. All right, we've got this big thing pointed at you. We've got the proof that we need. We're just going to go. And then they kind of just bail out, and the military faction leaves too. So Zoas asks that they blow up the space tube, and they do blow up the space tube so nobody can use it in the future as a giant space weapon. And then they all kind of go back to the Spherian homeworld, and in a short epilogue, it comes to like a real quick finish too. And then they have a short epilogue where they kind of wrap things up, where when they get to the Spherian homeworld, they're just so tired of all the arguing. They spend weeks trying to get the supplies they need, get the things that they need, even though they were, so helpful to them. But still, they have to deal with constant arguments and things like that. And then this is where Neelix comes through in the end, where the B story here was that this Maquis crew member needed a power supply so that he could power a replicator and then use that replicator to kind of get an advantage among people, by getting them food. Neelix goes along with it at first, then kind of realizes what happened and that he shouldn't have did that. And then when they get to the Spear homeworld, he takes it upon himself to trade the replicator for supplies. And he gets all of the things that B'Elanna needs to fix the ship, all the food that they need, and seeds and all sorts of good stuff. So a fun little ending where Neelix kind of comes through in the end and gets the ship what they need, and they're able to kind of move on and continue on their way home. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. It's just light, it's fun, it's easy. There's nothing too huge and crazy here. It gives you some interesting sci-fi species, some interesting sci-fi concepts to think about. So, all in all, I am very happy. And I enjoyed it so much that I am definitely going to continue reading Voyager. So, we will say at least we'll go with 3 more Voyagers, well, 2 more, for a total of 3 to start the month here, before we switch to something different. Which means that the next book that we'll be looking at here on the channel, and, oh boy, this is significantly bigger, too. Look at that. We've got Voyager number 6, Christy Golden's The Murdered Sun. And as you can see, the book right now is in very fine condition. Looks nothing like this poor book, which has been ill-treated and spent too much time in the shower. But we'll see what this one looks like in a week's time. Hopefully not as bad as that, because, man, this actually is really good. Don't read the back. Don't get spoiled. On the cover, we've got Tom and Captain Janeway. And, of course, Voyager. Got the Voyager there. All right. Anyway, I think we'll go ahead and call it a video there. We'll make some final notes here since we left a big spot blank. Good, fun book. Read it. And Neelix is fun. That's it. Final notes. Neelix is fun. Star Trek Voyager is fun and light and just good to get into. But we'll see what we'll get into next week with The Murdered Sun. Sounds like something's going on. So anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight, guys. As always, live long and prosper. And we'll see everybody in the next video. Good night.